Hi everyone, this is Vinod Chikareddy here. If you are somebody meeting customers, working with clients, or focused on revenue growth in any part of the organization, then we've got a coffee corner session just for you.
Hi, this is Krishnan Chatterjee. I'm with Markets and Markets, and I'm reaching out today to every CMO in the world.
Hi folks, this is Ashish Mehra. I head up our research at Markets and Markets.
Hi, this is Sachin Bajaj at Markets and Markets. How do you really take your go-to-market? How do you plan that better? You want to go competition, you want to go channel, you want to go customers, you want to know your customers. Come talk to us at the Coffee Time Conversation.
Yeah, the last 2 years have been exciting to say the least. We had the pandemic, and then we had the situation in Europe, and now the quasi-recessionary environment seems to be hitting us. Yesterday I read this article saying that the Bank of England is looking at a technical recession hitting at least England by end of the year, and for us potentially to stay in that zone for at least the next 12 months. Every day I speak with clients. The common refrain is, there's so much chaos going on in the world, why do we need anything like Markets and Markets? You guys are giving us growth, but yes, that's about it. But there's too much macroeconomic chaos that we are trying to handle. And what is it really that you guys can do for us? So it's a interesting question. Just wanted to check, Krishnan, what are your thoughts on this question that clients are asking?
So actually, to me, Vinod, we are again in a reset, just like we had during the global financial crisis over a decade back. This is again a moment of reset. And in this reset, we are seeing disruption like never before. One of the very good indicators is just look at the startup ecosystem, the number of unicorns being born. There is new kinds of value being created, and it's being created because of disruption. You look at the entire aerospace industry, unmanned vehicles, drones. We recently saw a very interesting example. All of you read it in the news. In the healthcare sector, digital health is sucking in so much of funding. You look at 5G as the precursor to things like remote patient monitoring. Sustainability as a wave, has not been driven by COP26. It's now actually being driven because of the Europe crisis. And I think what's very interesting at this juncture for economies and organizations to understand is, in a reset motion, in a race, you overtake around the corner. And there are multiple corners in front of us. At Markets and Markets, as you're aware, we see $25 trillion of new revenue entering the global B2B economy in this decade, which means in a 100 trillion global GDP, with half of it in B2B, 50% of every B2B company's P&L will be totally rearticulated as they exit in 2030. Now this is a huge threat. It is also a massive opportunity. And I think it just depends now on the mindset, on how you look at it. This is the time when forward-looking organizations are only going to think growth, and they are going to catapult and leapfrog over everybody else. This is why it's very important. And you were talking about client conversations, when I've been talking to clients, I see 5 things that every progressive organization is doing today to look at their growth thesis. And Markets and Markets helps in all 5. And think of it logically. If you want to grow exponentially, what are the 5 things you need to do? It's quite simple. You have to start by rapidly expanding your target addressable market. In fact, Vinod, we all remember Bill McDermott at SAP. What he did, he took an ERP company to massive expansion in addressable markets, and that paved the growth path for that company.
That's true.
Having expanded TAM, you now have to pick the markets that you see as great opportunities and go to market in them. Now, if you have gone to market and you're playing in a market, you need to be able to competitively create differentiated value. Once these 3 conditions are established, if you're a B2B company, typically you're selling to a set of accounts. how do you get your account motion in place? How, if you get into an account, how are you going to continuously grow wallet share? And finally, and this as a marketer, career marketer, what I find most interesting is I'm seeing a huge shift away from the traditional B2B marketing of feature functionality product to where people are saying to competitively differentiate, I need to focus on thought leadership, which will bring customers to me to have a dialogue rather than trying to force a product, because it is a moment of change. Everybody wants to discuss and understand. So I think the opportunity is immense. The threat is also huge. So it depends which side of the coin you follow.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, right? Looking at the market and growth on these 5 dimensions really unclutters the thinking that any CXO should have as part of their planning process. One key question that keeps coming up time and again, I mean, we all keep hearing software is eating all other industries. Everything is becoming adjacent to everything else. We are having chemical industry work into aerospace work into automotive. So this whole concept of total addressable market, which seemed to be quite an obvious topic, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, has become really fluid now. I was in this conversation with this client who has suddenly discovered a niche for their chemical, which they used to use in the steel industry, and now it's being applied into rocket ships because they have the same performance characteristics and thermal performance outputs. So they figured a new adjacent market. And of course, our work helped them. But the question is, how can we make this a ritualized process so that these CXOs can look through TAM expansion, not just in their industry, but potentially in all adjacent industry? What can we do for them? Sachin, maybe your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure, Vinod. And I think taking off from what Krishnan said, I think when you look at TAM, the market aspect is the first thing to start thinking about. As a CEO, as a strategy head, when I'm looking at market, what's my definition of market in the first place? Today, I would have started as a car company and I can tomorrow become a mobility company because I can do many other things. So when we look at the target opportunity, you're looking at a much broader market by the definition of who you want to become. And we also see that it's about identifying where you want to go, how it actually plays to your strengths and your advantages, what you also want to do in terms of opportunity maximization, where you've already built certain capability and then you want to bring in new use cases. You also possibly want to look at how will you target that specific market. So it's not just about defining a market, but then addressing that. Now that's where the second very crucial dimension comes in, where you would have done a great job of identifying a new market, but how do you then start playing in that market? What would you do with that? So how will you start planning your go-to-market? Now when you want to plan your go-to-market, there are some fundamental dimensions we have noticed which is very important. Like they say, execution has to meet the strategy. And you can do a great strategy, you can do a great job of your TAM expansion, but without the right execution, you're never going to meet the targets. Now, when it comes to GTM planning, unlike what many people think, it's not just about doing what you've already known for so many years, because you're addressing a new market, possibly requires a reshaping of your go-to-market team, requires a reshaping of your approach to market, but it also starts with first understanding the voice of your customer. Your customers should give you your best feedback in terms of what you can get. Secondly, it also gets into how you're actually going to take that opportunity and look at when you enter a new territory, a new geography, a new segment, should you do everything on your own or should you partner with somebody? Should you do everything in terms of a narrow space or look at possibly additional applications which you want to pick up? And how you'll actually plan the whole model out. It's very crucial. And what I have seen in the last couple of years is that companies are not just struggling with that, but in fact, they need a lot of help. And that's where I've seen with many of our customers, they walk into the door assuming that it's about the strategy and that's where there is the whole market opportunity and other things, but also how to then take it to the next level. And I was talking to Ashish a few days back, and he had a lot of stories to actually tell us. And Ashish, you can actually enlighten us more with what are some of the revenue impact stories we have in Markets and Markets.
Sure, I think this is, firstly, Vinod, I would like to say that this is perhaps the best time to think about growth, right? Because while of course you may be hitting a hard place in the short term, one really needs to plan for the next wave of growth. And I'll share a couple of interesting client examples. So I remember when COVID hit, one of our clients, they're the world leader in the world of oil and gas, and oil and gas prices plummeted to $20 or even below that, right?
Negative.
And yes, they were negative at one point in time
price.
in terms of futures and so on. And our client had a huge concentration risk in the oil and gas sector. And the only thing they could think of at that time was, how do we diversify beyond this? And how do we build additional revenue streams in adjacent markets where our product and solutions would be very relevant, right? And that was their moment of truth in terms of TAM expansion. And in a matter of a few weeks, we actually helped them. They were in a bunch of solutions like condition monitoring and remotely accessing plants and monitoring and controlling them, right? And we help them identify that, beyond just your oil and gas end-use industries, you can actually tap into chemical, you can actually tap into metals and mining, you can tap into paper and pulp. And frankly, that was their moment of truth in terms of TAM expansion. And then coming to the next piece around how do you make it real, right? So we identified, a revenue growth of opportunity for them, which was close to $500 million over the next 3 to 5 years, right? And it was significant for the business that they were operating in. And obviously the next step then was, how do we make it real? Because they did not know who to target in the chemical industry, right? Or who they should target in paper and pulp and metal and mining. And obviously the next step was to prioritize a bunch of customers, right? So, which customers are likely to have the greatest prospectivity in terms of the problems which their solutions would solve for. And then again, once we'd done that piece, the next step was to really understand the voice of customer, as Sachin you were mentioning. We basically help them understand what are the solutions that their customers in the new end-use industries were using today. How are those inferior to what our client was bringing to the table? And what specific pain points would get alleviated? And, a sort of a pseudo ROI. What is the ROI that the customer would get through the solutions embraced by our client? And that was so powerful for them because, they had, all of a sudden, they had a line of sight to that 500 million potential that, they were all dreaming about, right? And obviously the next step was also a bunch of stuff around marketing collaterals, demand gen, and so on, which we can talk about. There's another very interesting thing that Krishnan, you mentioned. You mentioned about so many different mega trends which are shaping the world. And in my client conversations these days, the single biggest question which a head of strategy is asking is, I know that our business is getting hit from all directions by sustainability, electrification of everything, connectivity, and all the mega trends, right? And it's very hard for me to comprehend how these are impacting my customers and what does that mean for me in terms of opportunities and threats, right? And I think the beauty about our business, which clients really love, is almost that, with a few clicks on our platform Knowledge Store, they are easily able to comprehend, what does that mega trend mean for, if I'm a chemical company, for instance, right? What does sustainability in the world of automotive mean? And what opportunities does it really create for me? And if I'm a lubricant company in chemicals, what are the threats that I have, right? I mean, given the world is headed towards electrification and EVs, but what are the new EV fluids that I need to place bets on, right, as my new revenue streams? In fact, we had a very interesting engagement with the client. And this particular client said, pick these three trends: sustainability, electrification of everything, and connectivity. And please tell us what are the top 15 bets that we as a company, where should we be placing so that we can secure our future in terms of the revenue growth that we would see from high growth markets. So I think it's possibly the best time to do this churn, so to say, and identify where we need to place bets.
I mean, that's a great positive view to the situation, which now brings us to the problem of the plenty. And this is the second most important topic people are talking to me on right now. When I speak to clients, they're like, Vinod, I go into your platform, I talk to your people, it looks like I have $1 trillion opportunity every day. I don't know where to prioritize. And really the challenge is a strategy challenge. Before it gets to the GTM itself,
Yeah.
this is a strategy challenge. We've
Yeah.
figured how to expand TAM. We will eventually help them figure out the execution, but how can we help them with the prioritization?
So let me take another example from a client. This is a technology client which provides a lot of IT hardware solutions, right? Storage, networking, the works. And this is exactly the problem. And they have an OEM kind of division which works with original equipment manufacturers, like for example an ABB or a Schneider in the energy space, or let's say with a GE or a Philips healthcare when it comes to diagnostic imaging and so on. And opportunity prioritization was their biggest problem statement. And actually it was at 3 levels. Mm-hmm. The first one was, which end-use industries do I prioritize? Which are the most prospective as far as my solutions are concerned, and therefore which ones are most amenable from a technology dependent standpoint, right? In terms of what they are doing. The second question was, within the attractive and end-use industries, which are the most promising use cases? And can I prioritize those? And the third one was, which accounts in those end-use industries should be prioritized so that we get a good cut of the most promising use cases, right? And of course, eventually it's an elaborate process, but fundamentally, I think it boils down to a 2x2. One is, the market attractiveness versus your right to win, right? And I think we have a very unique lens when it comes to market attractiveness, because we're not only able to look at the addressable market that it exists today, but also obviously, what would it be in the future? And we're able to aggregate the adjacent markets, which could also become addressable for you, given the footprint that you have. And the other piece, obviously, is the client's right to win, which in this case was dependence on technology and their ability to sort of penetrate some of those OEMs. So that's really at least been our secret sauce in terms of prioritizing opportunities for clients, and various ways to skin the cat, but broadly speaking, I think that's what works for us.
Also, another way, Vinod, so I can offer you a personal example, which happened prior to my joining Markets and Markets. One is the prioritization, if you're starting de novo. The other is, as a market-facing employee in an organization, you are starting with problem statements every day or every week. So, in a former job of mine, I used to at least know from other research providers that IoT was $1 billion opportunity for my organization in the territory that I was in. But I could never for the life of me understand, how do I unlock that opportunity? Where do I go? So I know there's $1 billion. Now what? And before I joined Markets and Markets, on the platform, the Market Intelligence Cloud platform you talked about, I went in there to ask the same question, because I finally did answer this question. It took me 18 months. And the answer I got there is exactly the answer the platform gave me, which is the number one use case for IoT in the region, was predictive maintenance for automotive companies.
And you got that answer in what, 18 seconds?
I got that answer in microseconds, as in it was almost. So I'm saying the other aspect is when I have problems, right? It's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? The answer was 42, and they started debating what's the question. So if you have the question, then you can easily prioritize on the platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that really is an interesting segue, right? We looked at TAM expansion, and we looked at how GTM is important. And Sachin, your thoughts on what are these key areas that customers need to focus on when it comes to GTM execution? One, of course, is the prioritization topic.
Sure. So I think eventually when you want to roll something out on field, you have people, you have your capabilities, and then you have a competitive set. And when it comes to your capabilities, the big determination you have to make is, am I going to do everything myself as a company, or I'm going to find a channel partner? Am I going to partner with somebody else? So for us, GTM planning should start with that, as to how are you really going to go to market? Are you going to go self or a channel? That's number one, which we focus on. And we have worked with several customers, and I'll request Ashish subsequently to give us some thoughts on that. The other big dimension is your competitive set. You can't go into a market, especially if it's a new market, it's an adjacency, blind. So you go in well prepared to address that market. And how do you really do that? First, get your nuance of the competition there. Now, because you're addressing a future market, I don't think you will be able to see competition from today's point of view. So you've got to take a unique lens to saying, this is a market which nobody is addressing. Possibly the competitive set is also unique. So how do you actually dimensionalize them differently? So that's the second big element on competition. And the third element, apart from channel and competition, is your own ability in terms of, should you still continue doing organic, or do you also want to look at possible companies which exist in the space? And what we are noticing, and in talking to various healthcare companies, in talking to any company which is focusing on innovation, they really want to look at an alternative M&A route.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend the time and the effort, because if they've identified an adjacency or a new opportunity, time to market is very critical. And we have noticed provide customers with the first mover advantage several times. Because if you are able to get the shortest route to the market, it is the first mover advantage, and secondly, you've well thought out your entire expansion of market. And there are several examples, and I'll request Ashish to give us a couple of insights in terms of where we have done the same.
Yeah, so let me start with the last piece, Sachin, which is around the M&A piece. I think again, I remember, we were working for a technology company and the healthcare division of that technology company. And this company had actually built a very strong business
The
on the
largest
pharmaceutical
software company in the world?
One of the, yes. So they had actually built a fairly formidable position on the pharmaceutical side.
Yeah.
But they were struggling on the medical devices side. And it was very clear to them that they had to really double down, build it quickly through acquisitions. And I think the one thing that they found, they were really impressed in terms of working with us, was our ability to build a long list of potential targets in a matter of hours, right, which they could take to. And interestingly, then they told us that we've been in conversations with some of them, so obviously those were weeded out. But our ability to get to a long list of relevant targets, and then I think our ability to actually find, if I may use the phrase, chinks in the armor of the target companies, right, through primary interviews. A lot of companies, the initial conversations that they will have with targets, they would be running blind, or whatever is available in desk research. But the one thing that was very unique about the value we added was we were able to interview folks who were ex-employees of those companies, competitors of those companies. These are mid-sized companies, like 30 million, 50 million, 100 million at max revenue. And very little information available in the public domain, right? So to be able to identify what would be your fitment and what are the risks, even before you've had the first meeting, it was pretty powerful insights, right, on the M&A side.
Yep.
And the other piece I think that you mentioned is competition, right, which again is very important. Actually, competition, there are two sort of hues to that. One is the futuristic competition, and the second one even is, your current competition, especially if you're operating in a red ocean, right? And how do you really bring those competitive insights which will result in change in your strategies on the ground and truly help you gain market share in a matter of a few quarters rather than a few years, right? And we've been working with a very large crop protection company and pretty much helping them run their Asia Competitive Intelligence Center, where we are providing them granular insights in terms of revenues of their marquee products versus competition every quarter. We're providing them insights on digital strategies that are working on the ground by competitors and what are some of the learnings for them, and a very comprehensive sort of benchmarking being done around aspects like product portfolio, distribution reach, digital engagement, in their case farmer engagement, and so on and so forth. And what's most gratifying is that individual countries in the Asia Pacific region on a quarterly basis are modifying their on the ground strategies, and in their own words resulting in maybe a couple of points higher market share gain, purely attributed to the deeper insights that are being provided. So I think that again, and competition is something that's not a one-time exercise. You can figure out what's your right to win, but you really need to keep on updating your view on a quarterly basis on a so that you pretty
Don't
much
get
stay in the
disrupted.
game.
Yeah, you don't want to get disrupted. True.
So yeah.
Yeah, market share is a topic which keeps coming up time and again, and I think you already answered that on why it's not just important to look at market share in a blue ocean strategy setup, but equally important in a red ocean strategy setup. And you've also answered the one common question of, I already have multiple sources of market share intelligence. Why do I need one more? I think the reality is they don't have an execution engine against the market share data.
I think so. That's a great point, Vinod. And when we started working with one of our clients, the statement was, I know that my market share is reducing and my competitor is gaining ground, and I'm getting that from on the field. But what I'm not getting is, why is that happening? I don't know that conclusively, right? What specifically are they doing on the ground which is helping them gain share and hammer my products, right? So that was, and there is a difference between getting anecdotal information from reps on the ground versus actually conducting a comprehensive, objective, reliable study. And I think objectivity and transparency is again a very important virtue when you're doing a competitive study, right? Because people need to believe in it for them to take action. And a lot of anecdotal information that just keeps trickling in from reps on the ground sometimes is not too believable. So that's another value, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've now gone all the way from macroeconomic reality to the field.
I know.
Maybe I can put it, we've gone from Game of Thrones to Alice in Wonderland. I think the next logical thing that comes in, and Krishnan, going back to your threads of execution, right? The next thing is the field. You got your sales teams and marketing teams. Obviously, some of our customers are more marketing-driven organizations. some are more sales driven organizations. What can we do there? And again, this is typically where they say people are dropping the ball. Even if they go to the big consulting firms, they get guidance at a certain level, but what they're lacking is the execution guidance. And I know Markets and Markets has this ability to drive revenue realization as well. It's not just strategy. So would love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you can talk about the marketing angle first or the sales angle.
So let me pull out a bit, talk about the whole front office, So let's understand the challenge of the front office. We've been running the CRO talks, and we have been talking to almost every CRO worth their salt in the world. And some very interesting insights are coming across the front office. See, the traditional numbers aren't going to change. So traditionally in B2B, we are all used to a situation where 15% of your revenue will come from net new, and at least 80, 85, sometimes 90% will come from existing customers. That may not change, but the quantum of that revenue is questionable right now, right? Growth. So the conversation now is moving from efficiency to effectiveness. And to explain that better, in the front office, I would say the last decade was a conversation around technology. So CRM, MarTech, we've all heard these terms. And these have enabled fantastic amounts of efficiency in the front office. Today, if a salesperson makes a call, it is documented on a CRM, it is assisted by a MarTech product. There is possibly geo-positioning data which is being used to triangulate the physical location, the travel expense may be correlated to, I'm belaboring the point, but the thing is, you can measure and track the efficiency of the sales call, no doubt. Now here's the challenge. What the seller does in that call is what will give you effectiveness. Is that sales call converting to pipeline and revenue comes because of what you do in the call, which no technology can help. And that is the discussion on effectiveness. And what we are observing is, what do you need to become effective in that scenario? You need content, you need intelligence. You're meeting a client, you need to understand the client's business and what is making the client do things. And you need to be able to give that client content which is genuinely enriching and value added, so that that client forms an engagement, a relationship that ultimately translates to business. So this is where, if you see the way we are working with clients, right, we are doing two things, covering both sides of the revenue pie. What is effectiveness in that account, right? That 80-85%. Let's start there. That's the most important. If you're running a B2B enterprise, your biggest next year revenue source is going to be your existing accounts. Now the question is, we just talked everything about disruption, change, trajectory. Ashish gave us several examples of entire business models transforming. Typically, when you look at a sales structure, servicing an account, and even a huge account, maybe an account which gives you $1 billion, you have fantastic channels set up with existing buying centers, existing propositions, everything. But if that account of yours is transforming into new businesses, has charted a new course, how well, and let me ask 3 questions of anybody who is now just thinking, put this problem in your head, you're the CRO, the CEO. Do your teams understand the new buying centers which are taking birth as a consequence of sustainability, electrification, digital health, connectivity, blah, 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 everything that you've heard? And let me assure you, massive new buying centers are being set up. Second question, does your team understand where the revenues of that account are coming from? Where are they investing? Because in their investment lies your wallet share gain. And if you don't understand the new areas of investment and you are vested in the current spend areas, somebody else will step in and take that and dominate your relationship. In IT services, we have seen this displacement happen very, very often. And many large companies have been impacted by it. In fact, The Indian IT sector is a consequence of this phenomenon, where they have managed to create relevance and have ousted the others. And the third thing is, today, top to top connect is a very important part of doing business. Are you able to formulate the executive narrative with which your team can walk into the boardroom of the client organization and create massive impact? Just think of these three questions. And if the answers to at least two of them are no, you have to start getting worried about that 80% of your revenue. Similarly, now let's look at the balance 15-20%. Where is it coming from? How you generate demand? Net new business. Now today, because of the discontinuity that the world is seeing, nobody is interested in BAU. So nobody is interested in a company coming and saying that, look, here's my product. In fact, let me take a very, I found a wonderful example of a technology company who sells, plant automation software. Now, let me correlate three mega trends: sustainability, Industry 4.0, IoT. The Venn diagram intersection of the three is, interestingly, the digital twin. So the number one sustainability initiative today in process industries, you see any oil and gas company, their biggest investment is in digital twin. This company I'm referring to, in their marketing material, the digital twin, they are fantastic. They are possibly the number one best positioned software to be the digital twin provider into process industries. Their commentary, their videos, their material is them explaining how their software makes the digital twin possible. But the power of the digital twin to transform an oil and gas company's business doesn't come out anywhere. So I think it's interesting that if you switch outside in and you build the right content and intelligence, you can look at 100% of your revenue line, the 85% on accounts, you grow wallet share dramatically, the 15% on net new, you improve the power of your lead generation and, more importantly, qualification. Many B2B companies, you'll hear the marketing team say, we bring these MQLs, marketing qualified leads. But sales says these are not qualified leads. The minute you hear that, your ears should shoot up, because then the content is creating the problem. So these are two areas that we are seeing great success working with clients in.
Yeah, and Ashish, our example of this client we are working with in terms of helping them define their go-to-market strategy for sustainability. Did you want to throw a little more light on how this vision of ours, at least on the sales and account side, is coming to life?
Yeah, I think frankly, on the account side, let me first talk about the account side, and that is, I think the very unique lens that we are able to bring is the intersection of what's going to happen in your client's ecosystem in the future, and what does that translate into a revenue opportunity for you, right? And now you can overlay on top of this multiple mega trends. You can put different lenses. You can put a sustainability lens, you can put an AI lens, you can put whatever lens you want on top of that. And you will be able to you'll get different answers, but you'll get a lot of revenue growth opportunities, right? So for example, for a technology company that we're currently engaged with, they have a top 100 account program, and let's just say that their top 100 accounts make up, let's say, $10 billion today, right? And they know that sustainability is a key driver in most of those accounts, because a lot of those accounts are in the energy space, chemical space, and so on and so forth, where decarbonization imperatives is an imperative, basically. And they are saying that we would like to get 10% incremental revenue, let's say, which is $1 billion, from sustainability oriented solutions in those accounts. But the challenge is at two levels. One, is a deep understanding on what exactly are the net zero goals and the investments being made by our client related to decarbonizing or sustainability. And the second is, how do we tee that up with the technology and the digital interventions that we are capable of enabling, right? And so that's one part of the narrative. And the second part of the narrative obviously is raising the conversation to the board level, to the CXO level, and perhaps even being a bit provocative about it, saying, we see that your competitor is working on a bunch of other decarbonization initiatives that you are not. And is that something you should reflect on, and can we help you with that, right? And such narratives usually work well, in a CXO conversation. And frankly, that's really how we're able to add tremendous value in most of these account IQ kind of conversations that we're having with clients.
And I'd like to add one point here also, right? Vinod, what Ashish was mentioning, when you look at an account, there are many dimensions which are missed out by sellers and the account managers. It's not just about going into the opportunity and discussing with your prospective buyer, but also enlightening the buyer itself on the possibilities. Today, I don't think the sales interface, like Krishnan was mentioning, it just came to my right that possibly, robotics or artificial intelligence will replace the sales guy in the future. But equipped with this intelligence, you're really saying that the sales guy or the girl is walking into a conversation, is able to bring relevance, content, but is also able to bring customer forward in a very different, meaningful relationship for the future. And when you're then actually cementing a model with the customer in terms of what you can do today, what you can do for the future, you're creating a much wider opportunity than what you can do today.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's always about selling capability. Today, it's about selling a vision, and a vision which is very doable. It's not a vision which is just up in the air, a finger in the pie sky, right? So I think that's a very important value dimension we see, where as sellers embark more and use our platform more, they'll realize the depth they can actually create in the customer conversations.
Absolutely. I think the way we do TAM expansion at a company level, we are doing wallet share expansion at an account level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can do it with various cuts, right from the mega trend cut to the industry cut.
Absolutely.
Essentially a new sort of service line to be created in these companies every year.
Yeah.
True. Very true.
So I just also wanted to talk briefly about the 15-20% of the net new logo piece and how through
Before we do that, I was curious to ask Krishnan a little more about this. Traditional marketing seems to be running smooth, Krishnan. And the typical question when I speak to a head of marketing, a CMO, is we already have this engine, we've got these agencies, we've got all these people running marketing for us. How are you going to do anything different? I know we talk about thought leadership quite a bit, but I just want your help to crystallize that thought leadership aspect a little more as to what is it that we do and how it is differentiated from the BAU marketing that teams are running. And Ashish, I'll come back to you with specific examples on this.
So again, it's all in the math. So you look at B2B, any B2B industry, and I'm going to generalize here, but the math will largely be true. Study P&Ls. You'll find that maybe 1, 2, 3% will be marketing spend. Okay. And you will find anywhere between 15 to 25% is SG&A spend.
Correct.
So the spend on the sales infrastructure in a B2B organization is typically 10 to 15x. What is the total spend in marketing? So what does that end up creating? And the other trap that many B2B companies fall into is sales and marketing are not seen as, let's say, continuous engines. They are actually in somewhat seen as competitive engines. So sales also generates demand. In fact, sales typically generates far more demand than marketing for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
They are closer to the client, etc. And marketing is out there on the fringe, trying their best to generate demand. by largely focusing on the feature functionality of the product they're selling. And structurally also you'll find in B2B organizations, most marketing organizations are product segmented in some fashion. They are not customer segmented. So customer segmentation is sales, marketing is typically product or go-to-market kind of segment. So what happens, what is the one vector which can unify this entire front office? Is when you come future back or outside in. So if you say here is the digital twin, or here is the sustainability initiative, or here is 5G, and you build a point of view around it, you can now impact demand created by the marketing channel and the sales channel simultaneously. Because fundamentally what you've created is a conversation that is of interest to the customer. No customer is interested in your product. Unless of course they are specifically at that time searching for your product, which would narrow your potential audience ridiculously. So the only way to do this is strike a conversation of high interest and then start the journey of engagement and qualification in order to create demand. If you start that journey early, when it enters your pipe, it will be qualified demand. If you start that journey much later, maybe that conversation is actually being struck by a salesperson, then a lot of the junk, so to say, has flown through your pipe, and that's when you hear the story. So I think what you need to look at, when you talked about so-called traditional marketing, is what's your MQL to SQL efficiency, and what does it take to multiply that by 4x. And that is where the power of thought leadership can play out. Ashish, you had something to say there.
Yeah, I think 2 points that I'd like to add, and possibly through a couple of client stories. I think especially when clients are looking at net new logos in end-use industries, for example, which they are less familiar with, a deep understanding of what are the unmet needs of customers, coupled with what could trigger a switch to their solution. And when you start packaging that and layer that either on top of the product feature based stuff that they're already doing, or replacing the product feature base to customer benefit, we're finding that quite powerful. Right? So customers increasingly, for example, are requesting us for an independent white paper on a particular, let's say, use case for which their solution might be very suitable. And why is it, what about that use case is changing, and how would their solution be a better fit than existing solutions, right? So that is clearly one of the ways in which we're supporting demand gen, right, with clients, especially with net new logos, I would say. The second piece is that in general, for you to have effective conversations and for you to raise the quality of MQLs, what do you need? You fundamentally need rich, high quality content about the market. That's all that we do, right?
Yeah.
The knowledge store platform has content with which you can shape your podcasts, you can conduct webinars, you can have a dialogue with your clients, you can use that for standing in front of 1,000 people and delivering your point of view, and that's what raises your stature with customers and gets you in front of.
In fact, this is a very interesting point, right? When he brought in knowledge store, see, this man-machine combination is an extraordinary thing. So let me take, let me be very hardcore about this. As a marketer, when you are preparing a white paper, it's not as if you want to spend a huge amount of time doing the real content of the white paper, right? Your primary interest is what's your proposition attached into the white paper.
Yeah.
Now what Ashish just described is with the knowledge store and the man-machine combo, the knowledge store spits out the first version of the white paper instantaneously. Now you put the man on top to really work on packaging the white paper beautifully, attaching your value proposition to it. So suddenly, instead of looking at a month to do a white paper, you are doing something in days. And therefore, the frequency of content in thought leadership, one of the obstacles to doing thought leadership marketing is just getting to the content is a huge investment of both money and time.
True.
So that's one thing that that this makes possible. The other thing that we should look at markets and markets dog fooding this concept. Today, one of our largest sources of leads and demand are three properties that we run. One is a digital explainer series called Around the Corner, and I'm sure you can see the link. And that explainer series, in just 6 weeks of launch, we have had about 200,000 views on the films that we have launched there, and they are getting us fantastic leads. The second is a podcast we run called Disruption Dialogues. Again, massive views. Third is we are doing a web series called the New Economy series for exactly this 25 trillion of 21st century opportunity. How do you unlock it? In fact, Ashish drives that. These three things are effortlessly bringing us highly qualified leads because, as you said, the content is of great interest and people want to discuss what's going on. Simultaneously, we are seeing our sales teams pick up this content and use it heavily in their client conversations, which was the point I made about marketing and sales coming together because you're driving through thought leadership.
Yeah. So effectively, we are looking at a discussion which is about taking growth all the way from the boardroom right down to the field and the marketing teams so that these companies can grow at a faster growth trajectory than what they could have ideally done.
I think very well said, Vinod. I would say from the boardroom to every market facing employee. That really is the virtuous cycle of growth, and that's what we're talking about.
And the time to think growth is now.